Hello, government students. In our last lesson, we ended with this slide here talking about presidential elections and introducing the Electoral College. And I want to spend today focusing on the Electoral College. Again, just as a refresher, each state is given a number of electors that is equal to the number of people they have in Congress. That is the number of representatives and senators. And then the District of Columbia also gets 3 electors. So there's a total of 538 presidential electors. To win a presidential election, you must get at least 270 electoral votes. And those votes are assigned in the states, usually on a winner-take-all basis. So no matter if you win in the state of Illinois, if Joe Biden wins by 1 vote in Illinois or wins by 5 million votes in Illinois, it doesn't matter. He will still get all of the presidential electors for the state of Illinois. So let's take a look at the 2 most recent elections. Here's the election of 2016, Trump versus Hillary Clinton. And you can see that in most cases, all of a state's electors go to whichever candidate that state supported. The red states going to Trump, the blue ones to Clinton. So Illinois had 18 representatives in the House. We had 2 senators, so Illinois had 20 electors. And they all went to Hillary Clinton because she got more votes than Trump in the state of Illinois. But there's a few anomalies that you see on this map. There's actually 2 states that have a different way. They do not do a winner-take-all situation. And those 2 states are Maine, up here, and Nebraska. And the way those 2 states do it is whoever wins the state gets 1 elector, and whoever wins the congressional districts gets an elector. So in the state of Nebraska, Trump won every congressional district, and he won the entire state. Therefore, Trump got all of Nebraska's electors. But in Maine, Hillary Clinton won the state of Maine, so she got an elector for that. And Maine also has 3 congressional districts, but one of those districts went for Trump. So Trump did get 1 presidential elector for that district that went for Trump. All the other states, though, are winner-take-all. So look at this weirdness, though. Look up here at Washington State and Hawaii and Texas. Those are winner-take-all states, but there were electors that chose not to go along with who won that state. Those electors are called unfaithful electors. They do not follow what they're supposed to do. They're unfaithful to the candidate who won the election. So in the state of Texas, for example, there was 1 electoral college vote that went to Senator Rand Paul. There was 1 presidential elector that went to Governor Kasich of Ohio. Now, these are both Republicans, and it was a Republican elector, but those electors did not like Donald Trump, and they just couldn't apparently stomach voting for him, so they voted for someone else, which is against the rules. Same thing happened up in Washington State, only in this case it was Hillary Clinton that won. But there are 3 electors that decided to support General Colin Powell for president, and another one who voted for a Native American that goes by the name of Spotted Eagle. So apparently 4 of the electors in Washington State, even though they were supporting someone that generally most Democrats would like, although Powell is not a Democrat, he was technically a Republican, but he was supporting the Democratic candidate in that election. They should have voted for Clinton based on the rules, but they did not. When you have unfaithful electors like that, it's against the law. They can be fined a penalty. I don't believe there's anything like a prison term or anything, but there is a financial liability for being an unfaithful elector. So, that's kind of the way it works there. But, sometimes it happens. It's very rare, but it can happen. Here's the 2020 election. No unfaithful electors in this election. However, we did have 1 congressional district in Nebraska vote for Biden, but the state as a whole went for Trump. And it was the opposite relationship in Maine. 1 district went for Trump, but the rest of the state went for Biden. And then you can see how all of the other states, the entire Electoral College went for whoever won that state's electors. This is kind of an interesting way to look at it. Since states that are bigger states in population will have more presidential electors, if we size the states by their population, you can see here that there is more blue on this map than red for the last election. So even though Donald Trump won a lot more states than Joe Biden, the states that Biden won have much larger population for the most part. So Biden won the election. Look at the results by county. Here you would think Donald Trump would have won in a landslide. But again, the counties that have a lot of people, the urban counties, tend to go Democratic in every election. And that was certainly the case in 2000. So even though Donald Trump won far more counties than Joe Biden, the counties Biden won have far more people than the counties that Trump won. Therefore, Joe Biden was able to win the election. This is another way you can look at the county issue. Again, the size of the bubbles is based on the number of people that live in the county. And you can see then that there's more blue on this map than there is red. And you can see that a lot of those areas that went for Trump have very few people out here in the West. Isn't it interesting how there's this obvious line between the more densely populated East and the less densely populated West? So you can see then, again, there's more blue. So Biden won areas that have a higher population than President Trump did. So let's look and see whether or not this electoral college business is a good idea or a bad idea. So to begin this discussion, I think it's important to understand that there have been several minority winners of the presidency. By that I mean people have won the electoral college vote who did not win the popular vote of the country. More people voted for their opponent, and yet they were able to become president with fewer votes, but more electoral college votes. This happened in the year 2000. That election, Bush won 271 electoral votes. Gore won 266 votes. But Al Gore received 543,000 more popular votes than George W. Bush did. So even though Gore gets more votes from the American people, Bush wins the election. And it was even a bigger deal in the 2016 election. Hillary Clinton won nearly 3 million more votes than Donald Trump did. And yet Trump won significantly more electoral college votes than Hillary Clinton, 304 to 227. That's a pretty sizable difference there, even though Clinton got almost 3 million more votes than Trump. So the Electoral College truly is somewhat anti-democratic, if you think about it. Excuse me, in many ways. In fact, there have been, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. There have been 5 elections when the winner of the popular vote did not win the election. And that goes back to John Quincy Adams and the election of 1824. He actually got fewer votes than Andrew Jackson, who ran against him that year. But Adams won that election in the Electoral College. Rutherford B. Hayes in 1876. Benjamin Harrison, I believe, was 1888. George W. Bush then in 2000, and Donald Trump in 2016. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink of water. Okay, so an argument would be then that the Electoral College does enable people to become president, even though their opponents are more popular with the American people. Here's that 2000 map, and this is kind of interesting. Look at this map and is there anything that you see on this map that seems kind of weird, like it doesn't really belong? It's an anomaly of some sort. Look up in the Northeast. The northeastern part of the United States tends to be pretty predictably Democratic. But look at New Hampshire sitting up there all alone in the red, 4 electoral college votes in the 2000 election went for George W. Bush, surrounded by an ocean of blue that went for Al Gore, his Democratic opponent. Now look at what the electoral tally was. Bush got 271 electoral college votes. Al Gore got 266. Neither one of these candidates campaigned in New Hampshire. I mean, after all, it's only 4 electoral college votes. Where do they campaign? They campaigned in places like Florida that has 25 votes, Pennsylvania with 23. There are a lot of states here that have a whole lot more than 4 electoral college votes, and that's where people want to campaign. So they both ignored New Hampshire. But what if Gore had actively campaigned in New Hampshire and gotten those 4 votes? Well, we add 4 to Gore's total, he would have been at 270. Take 4 away from Bush, he would have been at 267. Had Gore won New Hampshire, he would have become president. A lot of focus that year was put on Florida. Florida was a very close race that year, and Bush won Florida by only 500 and some odd votes out of about 10 million votes cast. Think about that, 500 out of 10 million. Even though Bush won by just a very small number in Florida, he gets all of Florida's 25 electoral college votes. So candidates will tend to campaign in states where they think they have a realistic opportunity of winning, and states then that have substantial electoral college votes. Here's that 2016 map, same kind of thing. Trump won, but Hillary got more popular vote, but she just didn't win a whole lot of states. The states that she did win tended to be states with lots of people, such as California, New York, and Illinois. Clinton won those states by a big margin. It allowed her to win the popular vote, even though Trump won many more states, but the vote count was closer in those states than it was in the blue states. This is an important map that gets to where candidates campaign, and this is all based on this electoral college. Where you see dark red, these are states that in the last election, it was pretty much guaranteed that they were likely to go Republican. Where you see dark blue, it was pretty much guaranteed they were likely to go Democratic. The light blue, they were probably going to go Democratic, although it was, the opponent had a shot at winning those. And the light red, same thing, likely to go Republican, but there was a chance that Texas could swing the other way. But it's these yellow states that are really important on this map. These are called toss-up or swing states. These are states where the vote is expected to be very, very close. And this is where candidates are going to campaign. They're going to campaign in these states where there's roughly, comparable number of likely Democratic voters versus Republican voters. Candidates will campaign hard in a state like Florida or Georgia or Ohio. They'll also campaign pretty hard in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Again, these are states that, they more likely would go Democratic, but there's a decent chance that they would go Democratic. Same with Texas. The other way now. So these are the states where people campaign. And it really means that candidates ignore a big part of the country. Candidates aren't going to campaign in New York or California, maybe Texas, but because Texas used to be a solidly dark red state, it is becoming a little pinker. So now they're starting to pay attention, but in past elections, they ignored Texas as well. Illinois is largely ignored. You don't hear many campaign ads in Illinois. Now, in Rockford, we may hear some just because they're targeting or focusing on Wisconsin, which is more likely to get campaign activity, or Iowa. These are more swing states, but Illinois, you don't get many people campaigning in Illinois. And as a result, this is how the campaign spending shakes out. The blue circle represents the amount of money spent by Biden campaign. The red circle, the amount of money spent by the Trump campaign in the last election. Biden raised more money, so he spends more money in all of these states for the most part, with the exception of Georgia and maybe Maryland there, I'm not sure. But you can see then that very little money is spent in most states. Very little, that means very little campaigning is done. Even a big state like California, virtually nothing was spent there, even though it has 55 electoral votes. Nothing practically was spent in Illinois. Texas got a little bit because it's considered a little bit more of a swing than it used to be. So this kind of tells you how this electoral college business works. With that, we're going to stop this presentation. Check Canvas. There might be something there.